Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar, 10 Coaching Skills Every Leader Should Master with presenter Hallie Crawford. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Sarah Baker and I'm the Associate Director of Professional Development here at the Emory Office of Alumni Engagement. I'm really thrilled to be introducing today's presenter, Hallie Crawford, who is a certified career coach and national career expert based here in Atlanta, Georgia. Her company, HallieCrawford.com, and team of coaches have helped thousands of people worldwide identify and transition into their dream career, effectively navigate their job search, and enhance their performance at work. Hallie is regularly featured as a career expert in the media, including U.S. News, Forbes.com, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, and Fox Business News. Hallie is also one of our partner coaches here at the Emory Alumni Association, so we're especially pleased to have her on this webinar. Today's session is going to be recorded and posted to Emory's YouTube channel on our Career Webinars playlist, and I'll email out a link to that if anyone needs to step out during the webinar. You'll be able to revisit this session later. And you'll also be able to find on that playlist a lot of Hallie's previous webinars and about 100 others from our other partner coaches. So lastly, at the end of this webinar, we're going to leave some time for Q&A with Hallie, and you'll be able to submit your questions through the Questions tab on your GoToWebinar toolbar. So without further ado, Hallie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you guys for being here today. We really appreciate it, and I'm impressed that you all have at least 100 or give or take that many webinars on your site. That's awesome. So thank you all for being here today, especially on your lunch hour. I'm Hallie Crawford, thrilled to be here with you. I absolutely love what I do, so I'm going to give you a lot of information today, and I tend to talk pretty quickly. So I will say on one of the slides as we go in a little bit further in here today that you can request from me a copy of the slides of the PowerPoint so that you don't feel like you have to be frantically writing everything down. So as Sarah said, I'm Hallie Crawford. I'm actually based here in Atlanta. I am a certified career coach and the founder of my own organization, HallieCrawford.com. And I have been coaching and training for it will be 19 years in March. I know I might sound like I'm 12 or maybe in my 20s, but I'm actually 45. And I absolutely love what I do. And one of the first things that I wanted to share with you as we talk about these leadership strengths and coaching skills that are important and helpful to leaders is that I understand how it is or can be to not know how to be an effective leader, because I was not always like this. And I still think I have, places I can still work on, of course, in being a leader. So when I first started my coaching organization 19 years ago, I was just I hadn't gotten my MBA. I have a master's degree and an undergraduate degree from Vanderbilt University and the University of Illinois, both in communications and psychology and education. But I didn't know how to manage other people, much less, lead people. And through the course of my coaching career, coaching people as well as past experience that I had before I became a coach, and learning about these different tools, it's become a lot better. And I've learned how to help managers. And so if you're a manager on this call today, this will be for you. But also, even if you're not a manager, help people be a better leader within their organization, which regardless kind of what role that you're in. Okay, so please know that all of these tips are going to help you be a better leader in your professional life in whatever way, shape, or form you feel like you need to use them. So fast forward, 19 years later, we have a very high satisfaction rating with our clients. And just know that if you feel like you're not sure how to be an effective leader, because we are able to help so many people get to that place, it's possible to figure this out and improve it, okay? So here is our agenda. I'm going to give you a quick kind of introduction to coaching and brief definition of what coaching is and what it means, because a lot of people, I think, have heard of it, but they don't always know exactly what true coaching is. We're going to talk about and go through 10 critical coaching skills today, and I'm going to give you advice on how to implement each of those skills and strengths and how to learn how to use those over time. And the reason why, and then we'll get the first poll here pulled up in just a second, Sarah, if you would, just want to say and explain to you all why having coaching skills is so beneficial to being a more effective leader. It's another tool in your toolbox, okay? So being a strong and effective leader, you need to understand what your goals are, what your personality type is, what your style is, and be decisive, be good at, managing projects and managing people. It depends obviously on what, position that you're in. But coaching skills are a very important tool to help you become a better leader, in large part because it's going to help you improve how you communicate with those that you work with, also how you manage them, though, and better understand them. So it will help you enormously. These coaching skills will help you improve the relationships that you have and become a better leader that way. And so I just kind of wanted to throw that out there so that you all understood why becoming, not that you're going to become a coach, but why incorporating these coaching skills can be so beneficial to you as a leader. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some suggested homework. Sorry, I'm a coach. That's my job, is to help people do that. I'm going to give you some action items that I would recommend you take as first next steps. So Sarah, I see that the poll is open. If we can go ahead and get that going. And then Sarah, if there's any languaging within the poll that's different, feel free to kind of read that out. But we're curious here today why you're interested in developing these coaching skills. If it's because you're a new leader, if it's because you're having trouble with some difficult employees or coworkers, or if you would like to become a new leader and work towards that, or if it's something completely different. And if you can go ahead and enter your responses, that would be great. And while everyone is doing that, just as a reminder, if you would like a copy of the presentation, this is where you would just email us to get a copy of that, and we would be happy to send that to you. admin@halliecrawford.com.
Okay, Hallie, so it looks like everybody has voted, and we have 16% said that they are a new leader, 11% said they have difficult employees, 32% said I want to take on more responsibility and become a leader, and 42% selected other.
Okay, I'm curious what the other is. Okay, so by the way, thank you for participating in that, and Sarah for sharing. That's awesome. So I will make sure that we cover all of these as much as possible. Please remember that we are going to have Q&A at the end. And if anyone doesn't get their question answered, don't hesitate to email me anytime after the webinar today, or even in the next few days or several weeks. You would just email us at admin@halliecrawford.com, and it will get sent over to me. I'd be happy to answer your questions depending on your scenario, okay? But I love that there's enough people here and a lot of people that want to become a new leader. That's awesome. All right, so I'm not going to read this slide to you, but just to give you kind of a sense here in terms of introduction to coaching. So I would argue actually that coaching as a profession, even informally, or just kind of coaching in general, has been around forever, for a long time. At the beginning of coaching, I believe that executive coaching, that was the most common thing. It was usually for people in the C-suite, and those people that were the higher up leaders in organizations, those were typically the people that would get or be able to take advantage of coaching in some way, shape, or form. Luckily today, and I think because of, if you look at the slide in the 90s, during the recession, managers and organizations and leaders realized that, oh my gosh, we need to help support our employees better because of the downsizing, okay? So that kind of made it more mainstream, so to speak, where anyone who is a professional, it was recommended that they take advantage of coaching and start to think about these, coaching skills. In 1992, Sir John Whitmore, a specific person in Britain, he was a motor racing champion. He published a book that helped kind of propel coaching into the forefront and, again, made it more mainstream. And as most of you have probably heard of, gurus like Stephen Covey and Tony Robbins, they helped with that as well. So that's part of how coaching became more popular outside of just for executives or even just for professional athletes, because most of you probably know that athletes will use coaching or coaches, and now it's becoming more common for professionals in general, okay? So second slide here, as part of this introduction to coaching, The way that we define coaching, and the coaching school that I attended was the Coaches Training Institute. It's one of the original coaching schools out of California, has one of the best reputations in the industry. The definition is more described. It's not telling someone what to do necessarily, okay? It's typically, if you look at this slide, it's helping someone learn in some way, shape, or form in order to improve their performance in whatever area they need to, okay? And if you take a look at the next sentence here, it is not about just flat out issuing instructions and telling someone what to do. Most of the time, effective and good coaches are more so helping people come to their own conclusion, showing them different perspectives and ways of looking at things, providing feedback, explaining something further, and providing context and encouraging, okay? As a leader, we often assume that our job in some way, shape, or form is to tell people what to do. And of course, that's part of it. You know, we have to be decisive and we have to make decisions. We can't just take a poll and go with what everybody says, okay? So that's not what this is about. But what we have found is that the majority of the time, people have that more limited view of being a leader and, oh, okay, I'm supposed to tell people what to do and be decisive and make decisions and that kind of thing. And just as in human nature, what we're used to, I think, when a friend comes to us, you know, and asks for advice on something, are just in human nature, just kind of what we normally do, our go-to is, oh, okay, well, let me tell you what I think you should do, and give them advice or commiserate with them, that kind of thing. That's normal. And what I want you all to start to think about, and the reason why we're here today, is to start to think about a different way of approaching things as well, in addition to giving advice and in addition to making those decisions, because you absolutely have to do those things as a leader for sure, but we want to add this additional tool to your toolkit in order to be better at the coaching model as well. And sometimes it's appropriate to ask a question instead of telling them what to do. Okay, so here's the deal in terms of coaching. Sometimes it's one-on-one, sometimes it's within a group, okay? And it is okay to give advice. Coaches do give advice and act as consultants. I do that all the time, but part of what my job to do is, you know, as well, is ask people the right questions and pull information out of them. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today. What coaching is and what it's not. It is a method to provide guidance to clients or employees or your teammates, okay? To try to work towards empowering them sometimes to find their own answers. I have had so many executive clients and CEOs, owners of organizations that got into the rut of always being the firefighter and answering questions and fixing problems too much. They got into the weeds too much. And then they have to kind of back out of that and change the culture of the organization to try to empower their employees to find their own answers and figure things out on their own when needed, okay? So this is why this piece is important as a leader, is to try to develop your employees and your teammates as well, to try to empower them to find their own answers when it's appropriate to do so. Coaching is not therapy, but feelings can come up and these may need to be addressed. So sometimes as a manager or as a leader, you have to deal with people's emotions. And I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you all, I have had clients say to me, Hallie, I don't want to move up. I don't want to move into a management level position because I don't want to deal with managing other people and the conflict sometimes that comes with that, or the emotions that can come with it because they just don't feel comfortable with it. So please know, if you feel this way at all, it's normal and it's understandable, and we're going to give you tools to help work around that, okay? And as I said a moment ago, it's not consulting. It's not just telling people to do, you know, or what to do all the time and making decisions for them, but there are elements of both coaching and consulting and advising. Sometimes you do need to put on your decision maker hat and just make the decision so that your team can move forward, okay? So it is okay to act as a consultant. You just want to make sure that we develop this coaching muscle as well, so that that is not your default and not the thing that you always have to do. You have other tools in your toolkit, okay? So these are the 10 critical coaching skills that we are going to cover today, okay? And these are foundational skills for coaching. So if someone comes to us and, they're like, okay, Hallie, I want to kind of get better at being just a coach in my professional life, not becoming a coach full time, but get better at these coaching skills, these are the 10 that we assert are the most important to help you get started, okay? And they're also, luckily, relatively easy for most people to adopt, to just kind of dive into the process of it, okay? So we are going to go through all 10 of these as we progress through the PowerPoint today, and I'm going to give you advice on each piece and kind of action items that you can start taking, okay? All right, so the first one is creating a safe and courageous space. So this is very coachy, coach-like language, the safe and courageous space. So I'll explain what this means just in your professional life so we can kind of bring it down to earth a little bit more. So one of the things I want you to think about is why this is important and how we can create like a safe space for our coworkers, for our employees to be direct and honest with us and share what's going on with them so that we can have that improved kind of open relationship. So why is it important? It's important for your employees and your teammates as a leader to feel kind of safe with you, so to speak. And what I mean by safe is, that if they share something with you in confidence, that you'll keep it that way. Or that it's safe to share an idea with you, that you're not going to poo-poo it and just, say it's terrible, that it's safe to, talk with you about things and, share ideas or restructure something. So you want to come across as a leader who is open to feedback and input, and you develop that trust with the people that you work with, okay? And this is why it's important to have a safe space, so to speak, and create that for the people that you work with. We say also a courageous space because this is part of empowering them to grow as professionals, and as a leader, you want to demonstrate that you are able to help motivate and empower the people that you work with and who work for you, if that's the case, to help them grow professionally. That's an important part of being a leader. So one of the things I want you to think about right now, and start to write this down for me, is what makes you personally willing to be open with someone. Just start to think about that right now. I'm going to give you some ideas as we go here, okay? But what makes you be more willing to be open with someone? Is it because you have established trust with them? Is it because you know that they're not going to share what's going on with other people? Is it that they have shared something and been vulnerable in some way with you? Whatever it is, I want you to start to think about that, because those are things that you can start to incorporate into being a better leader. And our second poll on the next slide is actually going to poll everyone about what makes you more willing to do that, okay? So as part of the advice here, in order to create this kind of space, though, with them, it's important and really good to structure your relationships a little bit more, conversations, one-on-one, and even meetings with people so that they understand kind of what the ground rules are and what you're trying to accomplish, okay? So when we start with a coaching client at the very beginning, we have agreements that we set up with them in advance of getting started with them to help set the stage and ensure that we are going to have an effective working relationship. So we agree to confidentiality with them, okay? And I put a question mark here because this is going to depend on the scenario, whether you need to tell someone that you'll keep what they're saying confidential or not. If it's something that you're going to have to share with HR, you can't say that to them. So that's why that's going to be on a case-by-case basis. But one of the things we encourage you to do to create this kind of safe space, so to speak, is as a leader, be willing to explain your style, your strengths, and what your desires are from them as a leader, okay? Don't just assume that everybody's going to figure out that you want to communicate with, you want them to communicate with you in this way, or that you learn better by, seeing something in writing versus talking about it. Talk to them and explain who you are as a person and as a leader so that they can better understand how to work with you, and they're going to be more comfortable working with you as a result because they're going to know what to expect. Be willing to be vulnerable or open when it's appropriate. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. When I worked with a CEO a long time ago in Idaho, one of the things he said is he was intimidating to his whole organization, and he kind of got that feedback from somebody. He had a sense of it, but he got the direct feedback from someone about that. And in his next sales meeting, he told them a story about early on in his career when he totally bombed a sales call. And that made him seem more human to them, more accessible, and it started the whole process of him changing the culture of the organization so that they saw him as someone that they could come to for advice and also, if they had an issue. Establish goals for the conversation or the meeting or the project. Make sure that goals are really clear. This creates a safe space as well because everyone knows kind of, okay, what's my role here and what are we trying to achieve? And then finally, when you're talking with people, check in with them. Is there anything urgent they need to talk about? Check in regarding their feelings about things sometimes too, not just about tasks. This does not mean go around and talk about feelings all day long. That's not what I'm saying. But check in with sometimes, people. So how are you doing? Like, how are you feeling about this project? Is it going well for you? Are you motivated by it? Check in with them. Find out what their values are and what motivates them. That will help you encourage them and tap into that motivation, okay? Second slide here, still on structuring the relationships. One of the other things that you want to do to create that safe space is gut check kind of the energy of someone else. Like, what are they not telling you? How do they seem to feel, even if they're telling you something different? And be willing to ask them about it. Hey, you're saying this, but I get the sense that this is going on for you. Is everything okay? Like, listen to your intuition and do a gut check of energy, not just being focused on tasks all the time, okay? Both are important. The second thing here is tell them in advance. So one of the things in terms of managing conflict or difficult employees or having to deal with touchy subjects with people on a regular basis, I always suggest to people, if you need to talk to them about something touchy that may be kind of a difficult conversation, let them know in advance and ask permission to do so. Hey, I need to meet with you today, and I need to talk to you about something kind of touchy. Is it okay if we set a time to do that? Okay, fine. Or if that's going to freak them out before the meeting even starts, it's okay to say at the very beginning, like, look, I've got these things that we need to talk about today, but I have some feedback I need to give you, and it may come across as not as positive. Is that okay with you? But I need to be honest and direct. It's not that you're asking their permission like you're not going to tell them, because especially as their manager, you got to tell them some things. But it's more just kind of floating that out there to kind of let them know that you do care. Is this an okay time to talk about it, or is it not? So asking permission in that way. The other way to create this safe space is not always just telling them what to do, but asking questions. Tell them that you will give them feedback. So as their manager, for example, let them know up front, like, hey, part of my job is to give you feedback. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do it in the most constructive way that I possibly can, but I just want to let you know in advance. I'm going to do that on a consistent basis. Is that okay with you? And what's the best way for me to do that? Do you want to do it in a formal meeting, or is it something, just kind of along the way? Ask them how they would prefer to get feedback and let them know you are open to it as well. And let's go ahead and open this next number 2 poll here, Sarah, if we could. Every time you meet with someone, it creates safety for them too if you review the action items so that there's clarity about expectations. Everyone knows what they need to be doing. They'll feel more comfortable that way because they know what's going on and what the next steps are. So if you can fill out this poll for us, and then Sarah, if you would read out the responses, that would be great. What makes you most willing to be open or direct with someone? And you've got some choices here. And then we'll go to the next slide.
It looks like answers are still coming in here, Hallie.
No problem. I know it takes a minute.
Okay, so it looks like 50% of our audience said trust, 11% said empathy, and 39% said having the other person be open with me.
Okay, good. Thank you all for sharing. I really appreciate that. And one of the things that I want you to notice from the results of this poll is people feel differently about how to build trust and how, when they'll feel comfortable with someone. And so part of your job as an effective leader, and then I'm going to pull up the next slide here, but part of your job as an effective leader is to understand how different people will feel safe with you, because one person will feel safe because of the empathy, but another one will feel safe because you've been vulnerable and open with them. And you know what? In some cases, you can ask them, what do you need in order to feel like comfortable with me, and establish that level of trust, okay? So it's okay to ask, and just remember, keep this in mind, that everyone is going to be a little bit different. Let's go to number 2 here. There are 3 levels of listening that effective leaders need to start to pay attention to and develop for yourself, okay? So level 1 listening is your own inner voice. I'm hungry. I'm sick of this meeting. This is boring. We're not getting things done like we need to. Whatever it is, that self-talk that you have, okay? Level 2 on the slide here is focus listening. It's listening to the other person and exactly what they're saying, listening to each word, but also the nonverbals and the nuances, the things that they may not be telling you, how it's coming across, okay? Leaders need to be at level 2 and also at level 3. I'll show you level 3 in just a second, but you need to be paying attention to what's going on with who you're talking to, the energy level as well of the room and what's going on with them. That's level 3. But the point is, if you ever find yourself kind of falling into the level 1 listening, okay, and you're just focused on what's going on in your own head, you're missing stuff that's going on with that other person. And to be an effective leader, you've got to get back over there with them, okay? So level 3 listening, and this is global listening. Global listening is basically the energy that's in the room between either the two of you or what's going on in the room. So you also want to kind of gut check, especially like in a meeting, like, how's everybody seeming to feel about this? Is it really, really tense? And it may be appropriate to call that out in the group. It may not be appropriate to call it out because it has to do with one person, within the meeting. You call them aside later on. Whatever it is, you at least, at a bare minimum here, you want to get better at this global listening, okay? And the way to do this is to quiet yourself down a little bit, even if you're leading the meeting, obviously still talk, but just kind of still your body and slow things down. You'll start to notice what's going on with other people when you don't talk as quickly, you speak more deliberately, and you start to pay attention to what's going on in the room, okay? If you need to slow other people down and say, wait a second, I think we need to talk a little bit more about that point that you just brought up, whatever it is, bring things up as needed. It's okay in some cases to interrupt people, especially if you're the leader of the meeting, and guide them a little bit. And in some cases, the way that you can understand and do better listening or more effective listening, understand what may be going on in the room, is you can ask a question rather than telling them what to do, okay? So think about this level 3 listening, and let's do the third poll, Sarah, if you could bring that up. How many feel they have effective listening skills? And what I mean with this poll, everybody, is kind of base it on, these 3 levels of listening that I've just introduced to you. Based on these, how good do you think you are at effective listening? And while we do the poll, I wanted to tell you there's actually an effective listening scale and worksheet that we have. Please feel free, if you feel like this is one of the areas that you need to improve, please feel free to email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. Again, same email address throughout the whole thing, but feel free to email us and I'd be happy to share that with you. It does have tools to help you improve your listening skills. Okay, Sarah, what have we got?
All right, so it looks like 47% of the audience said yes, they feel that they have effective listening skills. 16% said no, and 37% are unsure.
Okay, that's totally fine if you're unsure. The way to know and understand is using, the kind of the criteria, I would say these 3 levels of listening, okay? So get the presentation from us, listen to the recording, whatever's best for you, but get that from us and pay attention to it in the next week. So make a commitment. For example, this can be one of your action items. Make a commitment to say, okay, I'm going to pay attention to these 3 levels of listening and where I may need to improve. What am I already good at and what do I need to beef up on? Okay? All right, so let's pull up the next slide, guiding, not advising. So we've talked about this a little bit, but one of the things that we also want you to work on in terms of improving coaching skills as a leader is get a little bit better at guiding people versus just telling them what to do all the time, okay? And on this slide, I'm going to introduce you to what we call powerful questions. You probably have heard this before, some of you have, but powerful questions are basically leveraging your curiosity, being like a child almost, like they're open-ended questions. They're not yes or no questions. They don't have judgment in them, and they allow the employee or the coworker or whatever it is to experiment with their own answers. Sometimes these are appropriate, everyone. Sometimes they're not. If you just need to tell them what they need to be doing, that's okay. So part of this is judging the difference between the two. And what I would encourage you to do is practice with powerful questions and like kind of lean on those a little bit more in the next couple of weeks here and see what comes out of asking those questions, okay? So some examples of powerful questions would be, how can you do this more effectively? You know, what are some ideas there? Another powerful question would be, so why is this happening? Why do we get to this place? What do we need to do to improve? What do you want? What is the cost here? What's another choice that you could make? And what's the truth about, you know, this product or service? Is it really serving, you know, our organization or not? Okay. So powerful questions are those open-ended questions. And when you ask a powerful question, and this goes even for friends and family members, obviously, too. But when you ask a powerful question of someone that you work with, it enables them to step into becoming a better leader and into their role more. So these questions are also good for helping develop people when you need to develop them professionally, asking them to try to come up with their own answers. And then if they can't come up with their own answers, or they're coming up with the wrong ones, that's okay. That's when you can start to guide them and give them advice. Great, those are some ideas. Here's how I would approach it if I were you. Can I share that with you? Okay, fantastic, okay? So I would practice with powerful questions, even in your personal life a little bit. It can actually be really hard because too often we end up starting out a question and it's like, oh no, it's going to end in a yes or no, and we have to kind of backtrack a little bit. So powerful questions can help develop your relationships enormously too, because they will help build trust, because you're asking their opinion and you're asking them to step up to the plate, okay? Tip number four is self-management. We talked about this a little bit with the listening. It kind of goes hand in hand with that, okay? So here's the deal. As an effective leader, you don't want to be like this guy from the movie. I think it was Office or Office Space. I can't remember. I have to look that up before I do this. But staying present with them is one piece of it. So there's kind of two pieces to the self-management, okay? Staying present with whomever you're talking to within the meeting, not thinking about your own thing, whatever is going on. That is a big part of the self-management. Another piece, though, that is huge is managing your emotions effectively. As a leader, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get angry sometimes. I mean, it's just human nature. It's just part of who we are, okay? And to better understand how to manage your emotions effectively, one of the really great books that we like to suggest for our clients is Emotional Intelligence. There's a picture of it on the slide here. But this is a great book to help you understand what EI is. It's a buzzword. You all have probably heard of it. It's been around for ages. But great leaders are just as good, and I think in a lot of cases, better at emotional intelligence than just being smart about the project or, the organization or whatever it is. To me, in so many cases, emotional intelligence trumps just intellectual intelligence, okay? It's not always the case, but it's critically important. If you can't get your ideas across, and if people aren't listening to you, it doesn't matter how smart you are, okay? So understanding how to handle, especially these negative emotions or more difficult ones like anger and frustration. If you've got to step out of the meeting for a minute and just use the excuse, I need to go to the bathroom or whatever it is because you're getting frustrated. If you're not ready to answer someone because you're concerned that you'll come across in the wrong way, tell them you'll give them an answer tomorrow. Tell them you'll talk to them over the phone instead or send an email, whatever is appropriate, okay, for the situation. But being an effective leader, just like a coach has to, we have to manage our emotions effectively. And just kind of as a side note that I want to say, and then we'll keep going here, is one of the things that coaches learn to do too that would be important or is important to be an effective leader is we don't take on the emotions of others. So we've learned how to kind of have like a filter or a little bit of a barrier in between ourselves and our clients in order to make sure that we're not taking on all of the emotions of the other person, because then we'd be exhausted. So one of the things to do, and we'll talk about empathy a little bit later in the slides here, it's important to learn how to be empathetic to people, but not take on what they're doing. You can understand what's going on for them and be empathetic to them, but you don't have to take on the emotions of what's going on. And that's part of the self-management. Okay, so number 5 is curiosity. And this is, again, goes back to the powerful questions. Sometimes it's not appropriate or not the right time to offer judgment or opinion. Sometimes it is, but you want to kind of hold back with that and ask questions instead. Staying present with them, again, like we said, offer your opinion, though, when it's appropriate. But also, in terms of curiosity, you want to make an effort to understand their perspective. And this is a little bit different from empathy, because empathy is a little bit more about understanding where they're coming from in terms of, their emotions and kind of the emotional state they might be in. But as part of curiosity, even if someone has an idea or suggestion that you don't agree with and you don't think it's the right way to go as the leader, make an effort in that moment to at least understand their perspective, because there could be something that you could learn from where they're coming from that could enhance the idea that you have, okay? So always make sure that you stay curious to a certain extent and not just, walking around making demands, obviously. I know that, of course, you guys wouldn't, but just wanted to make the point there. So number 6, intuition. Also, as a great leader, a good leader, will check in with their intuition on a regular basis, okay? So you want to listen to what people are not saying so that you can call that out, like we talked about with the energy level. Sharing your intuition, as long as it's non-judgmental and without attachment. Sometimes it's important to just say, you know what, I don't feel like this is the right way to go. I can't say exactly why right now. Let's hold off on this decision until tomorrow, okay? Whatever it is, listen to your intuition. There's a lot of value there. Okay, and when you're sharing your intuition with others, after you've kind of sorted it through, the way that you can share it could be a feeling that you have. It could be words that you're using or an analogy that you're giving. Whatever it is, go ahead and I guess the best way to describe it is we all have intuition, a gut sense of things. And if we start to not listen to it for whatever reason, our intuition, it just kind of like starts to go away. It's like a muscle to develop and a muscle to keep kind of sharp, okay? So in order to be a solid leader, you want to be able to tap into that intuition when you have it, then be able to articulate what's going on and why you're making the decision kind of as part of it, okay? So number 6 is to kind of get more in tune with what your intuition is, but also be more willing to share it. Number 7 is to make sure that when you're leading people and working with them, make sure that you have these 3 components here on the slide. You can suggest action items to them to follow up with what, the meeting that whatever it is you've just discussed. You want to make sure that you provide accountability. And also, though, the main thing I wanted to say, everybody, from this slide is sometimes it's not like with your employees, it's not about just telling them to go take some sort of action. Sometimes you're asking them to think about something they need to learn and understand, or adopt a different perspective on how to approach their sales, for example, okay? So sometimes their action item is going to be something that they need to go think about and read about and come back to you with. So just keep that in mind as a leader when you're coming up with action items for people. It can be tangible things, but it also can be kind of thought-provoking things that they need to learn about, okay? As we progress here, and we'll get to these next few here, I wanted to mention that I'm happy to offer a strategy session to anybody who's on the call today or listening to the recording. If any of this feels overwhelming and you're like, oh my gosh, this is a lot to, digest, please know that I'd be happy to chat with you for about 15 to 20 minutes about any goal or anything that you need help with, whether it's related to this or something else. Because I also realize that while we give kind of, advice in these presentations, a lot of times people have very specific questions and specific scenarios that they need help with. So please feel free to reach out for that. Happy to do it. All right, number 8 is empathy and developing that empathetic perspective. It's understanding other people's thoughts, their feelings, and condition from their point of view, okay? So imagining where they're coming from, this goes back to talking about, trying to understand their perspective. Empathy also adds, try to understand how they might be feeling. Do they feel like they're in over their head because this is brand new? You need to help them with some of their beginning action items then, and you may need to bring that up to them versus forcing them to do it because they may feel scared or nervous to do so. So developing empathy is really important. This slide shows you, as a leader, what the 4 needs of followers are. Okay, so this is a model from a consulting firm that we think very highly of. The 4 needs of followers are these, okay? Trust, compassion, stability, and hope. I'm not going to go through this whole slide here. They're very straightforward, but one of the things that you need to understand as a leader and develop for yourself is to develop this empathy to know when it's time to build trust with a specific employee or with your team, when they need a little bit of hope because perhaps they just got bought out, the company did, and they don't know what's going to happen. That's when you need to go back to this and give them that hope, compassion, and stability, okay? And these are the subsets of each one of those, okay? So followers of any shape or form, meaning whether they're employees or even just like if you're leading a team, these are the needs of followers, and it's your job as the leader to help them get these needs met, okay? Tip number 9 is to recognize other people's strengths and leverage them within your team. This is the way that you can identify and help other people identify what their strengths are. So this can help you develop others as well. So this sign model, everyone, is from the Gallup organization that does the Strengths Finder assessment. This is from one of the books that they have published. And these are the signs, basically, of a strength. So when someone is successful at doing something, obviously that means that's a strength for them. When they have an instinct for it and like that's their go-to, they always want to approach a project this way, that's one of their strengths as well. When they're growing as a result of building upon that strength, and afterwards, if you can tell that some of your teammates or employees, when they perform a specific task or work on a specific project, they're really excited and it feels like they're just in the flow, that's a sign that that's one of their strengths. We would encourage you to have other people think about this, if you have employees, to better evaluate what their strengths are. But as a leader, you need to understand not just what the people's strengths are that work with you and for you, but how can you integrate them together and help them explain what their strengths are to each other so they can form a great team, okay? And then tip number 10, and then we'll get to the Q&A here, is to develop your own unique leadership style. So you have to also remember that all great leaders are all completely different. Everyone has a different leadership style, and one is not better than another necessarily, okay? So you have to think about it as what is your unique style based on what's on the slide here, what your strengths are, what your soft skills are. You have a very strong work ethic, you're very detail-oriented, whatever it is, what your values are, what's really important to you in terms of your professional life, and how does that play out in the way that you lead your team and other people, and also your personality type. Are you more introverted or extroverted? If you're more introverted, tell people that, or the other way around. Let them know who you are as a leader so they can better understand how to work with you, and that will help develop the trust as well. And also, are you more creative or structured? These are just some examples to think about what your style is and would be as a leader based on who you are as a person, okay? And finally here, we'll get to the action steps after this next slide here. This wheel is from Development Dimensions International. It's a management consulting firm. These are what they assert are the top 10 leadership skills that are most important in this day and age. We highly encourage you to fill this out so that you can start to understand where your strengths are as part of developing your style and your unique brand as a leader, okay? If you can fill this out for yourself and understand what your highest, ranking items are, that will give you a sense of, okay, this is where I naturally excel, that's my style, and the areas where you don't excel as much, the lower ranking items, will be where you need to find people to kind of fill in the blanks a little bit, and areas where you can start to develop and improve, okay? All right, so we're going to pause here for a moment. I know it's a lot of information. Sarah, I can stay on until 5 till the hour, at least, just to make sure that we get all questions answered. I know I said something different, but I love what I do. I get excited and I say a lot of stuff. So here are some possible action items that we would recommend for you. The leadership wheel, the listening scale that we're happy to send to you if needed, free career strategy session. Like I said, I'm happy to do that with you all. And if anyone is interested in individual coaching and talking more about how that can help you, I would be happy to schedule a complimentary consultation with you. These are some of the results that we get for clients and testimonials from them. Happy to chat with you about any of that if needed. And final thought, as you're formulating your questions, please go ahead and put those into the chat box. The greatest risk in life is not taking one. This is the quote that always reminds me if I'm freaking out about something and I don't want to step out of my comfort zone, this is what pushes me forward. So I wanted to share this quote with you because all of these things I get, there's an element of risk in all of them. But you know what? If you're not going to take a risk, you're not going to get the reward. All right. So thank you all again for your time. Let's do the Q&A. And Sarah, if you could just read those out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. So for the audience, in your GoToWebinar toolbar, there's a section called questions, and you can submit your questions there. And Holly, we do have a couple coming in. So the first one of our audience members asked, what are some examples of good open-ended questions?
Great. So open-ended questions would be, what is another way to handle this challenge or problem? How could you improve your performance on this task? How can we better work together? Do you have any ideas on that? So the open-ended questions, notice they're not yes or no, and they assume that the person's going to have some idea, which is empowering as well. So those are some good examples that you could start with. It depends on, obviously, the situation, but beginning with like how or why, that's kind of a good clue that, you know, it won't be yes or no at the end. Hopefully that was helpful. Sarah, let me know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Cool. So a next question here. Another member is interested in hearing your thoughts about the dynamics of managing and coaching peers of different generations. So does the coaching differ, and if it does, how so when you're coaching maybe millennials versus an older generation?
Sure, great question. That's fantastic. So for the most part, it is going to be the same because these tools like go across the board. However, with millennials, one of the things that we know is they may need to be heard a little bit more and kind of get their voice heard a little bit more. So maybe asking more questions of them and allowing them to spend more time kind of venting or whatever it is, they may need a little bit more of that. The older generation may not take as kindly, especially like if you're younger, to being told what to do all the time. So again, with them asking questions, but it may be a little bit different. It may be a little bit less like millennials, maybe a little bit more touchy-feely, like how do you feel about this, that kind of thing, where the older generation, what's another way that we could approach this? Can you give me your advice? You know, they would love that. So those are like very specific examples. I think it mostly depends on the person and what their style is, the person that you're talking to. But in general, when you're using these tools, always use them, but you may need to use them in slightly different ways depending on the audience that you're talking to.
Great, thank you. So one other question here. It says, as a new supervisor, how do I best set the tone for a long-term coaching and advisory relationship?
As a new supervisor, how to set the tone. Okay, so one of the things I would do is to establish the trust and kind of the safe space. And the way to do that would be to come up with structures and agreements about how you all work together effectively. Come up with even a team charter. If you Google team charter, I actually have a team charter sample. So by the way, if anyone wants that, please just feel free to ask me for it. But if you come up with agreements, like I said at the beginning about, okay, what's the best way for us to communicate and how frequently and how do you best learn and what are your goals for this role, and what motivates you the most. Asking the questions about who they are as a person, how they prefer to communicate. Of course, you get to, make the decision at the end of the day based on what's best for you. But asking these kind of big open-ended questions about how you all can work together effectively would be the first thing to do, because that will establish trust right out of the box that you value their opinion and you value their work style as well. And it will help you set up positive ways that you guys can work together too. And you have these agreements, like how are we going to handle conflict? You have them up front so that when the conflict comes around, because it will, you will have set the stage for how you want to handle that effectively. Hopefully that answers.
Yes, thank you, Hallie. We have one more question. So this one is from Brittany Void. She said, what are the best strategies for dealing with difficult employees? So perhaps those employees who might not see the value in the coaching or respond as quickly when you are asking them those open-ended questions.
Sure. If they can't answer right away, you can say, why don't you think about it and get back with me tomorrow? If they're resistant to the questions, you can just ask them, like, so is that the wrong question to ask? Is there a different way that you want to approach this? Like, kind of hold their feet to the fire a little bit about what's really going on in their head. And it may be, and very well could be, a difficult, kind of touchy conversation, but it's better to find out what's going on with them so that you guys can deal with it in some way, shape, or form, even if it's like, look, I'm sorry, but this is the way it has to be. Then at least they've kind of aired their grievance or whatever's going on. So invite them to be honest and direct with you. Throw out the question if they're not answering and just go right back, take a step back and say, so what's going on? Are you doing okay? What's happening here? And see what, try to get them to be honest with you. Okay?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, so I know we're coming close on time, so I'm going to close. There were a couple other questions, and I encourage you, those of you whose questions we weren't able to get to, please do reach out to Hallie at that admin@HallieCrawford.com email. So thank you so much for your time today, Hallie. And as a reminder to everyone who's tuned in, there will be a recording of this session available on Emory's YouTube page on the Career Webinars playlist within the next day or so. And again, if you want to receive a copy of Hallie's slides, you can email that admin@HallieCrawford.com. The Office of Alumni Engagement hosts about 2 of these webinars per month on a variety of professional development topics. So if you enjoyed today's session with Hallie, I really encourage you to check out our full calendar of upcoming programs. That's available at alumni.emory.edu/career-calendar. So I hope everyone has a great rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing you at another Emory program again soon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, Hallie.
Bye-bye.